Welcome to Beyond the Lines. I'm here at Wine Connection in Sukhumvit Soy 47. We have a great show lined up for you today. I'll be talking to American travel writer Joe Cummings about his life in Thailand. Joe's written numerous articles for magazines all over the world, several travel books, phrase books, coffee table books, penned many songs for his indie rock band that he still tours with. And I'm looking forward to getting some very interesting travel tips directly from Joe. So let's talk to Joe. Welcome to Beyond the Lines, and I'm here with Joe Cummings. Joe, welcome to the show.
Yep, thank you very much.
Thank you for being here on this balmy hot day in Bangkok.
Yeah, it's pretty hot.
It's seriously hot, isn't it?
Yeah.
Joe, tell us, what inspired you to become a writer?
I think it was bad behavior in school.
Really?
Really. I always liked to write, but I didn't really think about it consciously when I was a kid. But by the time I was living in France in an international school in 5th grade, so I was 10 years old, I would have been there. The teacher was so fed. She said that I was a complete distraction to the rest of the class. They wouldn't let anyone else learn because I was just cutting up all the time, except during the composition hour.
Oh, yeah.
I would get quiet. So she took me aside like the first week of that year and said, how about I stick you in the corner and you just write. That's all you do is write the whole year, and I'll just grade you on that. You don't have to study any other subjects.
Well, that's pretty cool.
It was pretty cool.
In school to recognize a talent at that early age.
10 years old, I wrote 23 short stories.
Oh, yeah. My God. And
Silly short stories.
Yeah, and several years later, you're still writing.
Yeah.
I'm sure you could go out for lunch and just sit down and write a short story.
It's easy. It comes really easy to me. It was just kind of boring in a way.
Yeah. But a great talent. How did you get from there to Thailand?
After I'd finished college, I did my BA in Southeast Asian politics was kind of what I focused on. Political science degree. Can't do much with that. I had been playing music, as you know. I've played music since I was a teenager. Yeah. So I just started playing in bands, and I was playing full time in the States on the East Coast. It's my early 20s at this point, and I got fed up with the music scene, and so I wanted to change. And I kind of got spiritual. I wanted to study Buddhism, and I actually came here to study Buddhism.
Political science to Buddhism.
Yeah.
It kind of covers everything.
Yeah,
really,
I kind of just left political science behind. I've never even
and you get to travel.
Yeah.
And see the world.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to do too. I felt like I was really in a really narrow place, at that point. Yeah. So I wanted to expand my horizons. So
yeah.
That's how
Fascinating. So you arrived in Thailand, and The Lonely Planet, the first edition, and for many years you continue to work on that. How did that come about?
Thing. I mean, when I was here in Thailand, it was like towards the end of my stay before I went back to the States. I was leaving Thailand actually. I was going to go to India and Nepal, and I went to a bookstore somewhere. I wonder where it was, probably Asia Books. Mm-hmm. And I saw this Lonely Planet guide, Southeast Asian on a shoestring, and I picked it up, and I hadn't seen it before. And I was really impressed with it. I kind of used it then as I moved into. I used it going into Burma actually and Sri Lanka, and I was thinking, why don't they have a guidebook to Thailand? So I just pitched it to the owner, Tony Wheeler, and he went for it.
Oh yeah, lovely.
That was pretty easy.
And then you started basically writing and travel. Where was can you remember one of the first destinations that you decided to write about in Thailand?
One thing Tony Wheeler wanted as sort of an audition. He wanted me to write something about Thailand in advance, and then that's before I got final approval and in advance, the money. So I wrote about. So the first place I wrote about, I knew I had to find something that he'd never heard of, and most people never heard of.
Yeah.
I wrote about Got Si Chang, that little tiny island off Sriracha.
I've heard of it, but haven't been there.
Well, I wrote about that. It used to be an amazing place back in the late '70s. That's what I was saying. And now it's like kind of overrun with oil business and stuff. But it was that was it. Yeah. That was the first one.
When you arrived here and you were writing about these places, did you speak Thai? Thais probably at that time weren't that proficient in English or even meeting foreigners, especially in those isolated locations.
Yeah. No,
how did you manage to?
Well, I joined the Peace Corps.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I took the Peace Corps language. It was like 3 months, 6 hours a day for 6 days a week for 3 months, and that kind of got me started. It's like. It gave me a base, but then I studied further. I went back to the States and did my master's at UC Berkeley, and there I studied serious Thai, like started reading classics, epics and things like that, and poetry, which is really hard. And so after that experience, I felt like I really had Thai, and that was about the same time I did the first edition of Thailand. So I was pretty much fluent in Thai when I did the first edition.
Wow, okay.
Already.
So how many years did you actually, did you work on The Lonely Planet from the first edition
Yeah.
through to...
Well, yeah, 25 years. The first research trip was in 1981,
Yeah.
and the last one was in 2005, and the last writing was in 2006. So it was 25 years, and I did a new edition every 2 years. So it was like I forgot 12 or 13 editions of it, and now another team has taken it over since I left in 2006.
While just traveling constantly back and forth to...
Yeah, I used to spend about 6 months a year just on the Thailand book, and then the rest of the year various other writing projects.
And while you're traveling, I guess you got to play a bit of music. And did you find interesting musicians and bands in Thai? Did you get involved with Thai music at all?
A little bit. I less so in the. I mean, I probably. It took me a while to get into playing Thai music. Not that I play Thai music very well. I know a bit about it, but I can kind of jam along now with all the different forms. None of them really well. Malam is probably my strongest thing. But no, in the beginning I was playing with like Thai pop bands and Thai. You know, country and western was really big in the early 80s.
Yeah.
And so I played with a bunch of country and western bands all up and down Sukhumvit back then.
Fantastic.
And then I lived in Malaysia for a short time too, in 84, 85, and they were really crazy about country music and blues also. KL was a big blues town then. There wasn't much blues.
Because the indie rock wasn't around. There was no jazz fusion really.
No.
Hadn't really taken off in Asia or anything, or funk really had it.
That's it.
Although there was some Thai funk bands quite some time ago.
Yep. And they were kind of that early funk era was kind of gone by the time I got here. It was like early 70s and late 60s. And I wish I could have gotten into that.
We could talk about music all day. It's great. I love it. But back to writing. What keeps you fresh and creative? I mean, for so long you've been writing for decades now.
It's the travel. I mean, luckily, you know, it was funny because I, obviously, from a very young age, writing was a passion, somewhat of a passion. You know, it was a craft I developed early. Yeah. But I also really loved to travel, and it was like kind of miraculous that somehow at that they merged. But that wasn't planned. That was because of the success of Lonely Planet. Yeah. So then I started doing more and more travel writing. Started doing newspaper and magazine feature writing. Yeah. And so what's kept me going is the fact that I'm just always looking forward to the next trip. I still love to travel. That's still the best part of the job. The writing, I'm just like, it's got to be done.
It's something you do.
You got to collect the paycheck. You know,
yeah, that's right. What's one of the most interesting articles you've written that you've read more recently?
Well, I have one in Travel and Leisure this month. Travel and Leisure Asia, the one that's based in Bangkok. But they do syndicate the articles in London and New York and Australia and other editions, India as well. Anyway, I did I pitched them. They gave me an assignment to go trek on Mount Kailash, a Kora. It's like a spiritual pilgrimage in far western Tibet, a very remote corner. I don't know. Some people will know of Kailash. It's like sacred to Buddhists, Hindus, Jainists, and there's a fourth religion, the Bon religion, which is a minority religion there. And I'd always wanted to do it. I probably physically I should have done it like 15 or 20 years ago. I'm like at the upper age limit of being able to do it and survive. But
Trekking's tough.
And it was anyway. It was a great trip. It was like, and because it was a great trip, and it was kind of an epiphanic experience, I could say, for me. So then it became a nice article. I'm really proud of that one. And it's I believe it's the longest travel feature they've published.
Oh wow!
It's like instead of the standard 2,000 words, it's like over 3,000.
Okay, that's an article you'll definitely have to check out. From articles. Coffee table books, and this is one. I mean, the rest are sold out. I couldn't even get any. So and there's a second edition coming as well.
Right. Yeah. This one's like 3 or 4 years old, and it's doing quite well. For a coffee table book, which coffee table books aren't usually mega sellers. They're not like novels, obviously, or even some like self-help books. They do really well. But so books like this, they're just kind of simmering, But this one's the best selling of all the ones I've done, and maybe because tattoos are just they're so fashionable all around the world. People want to know, especially. Kind of got some magic mixed in there, so people.
Yeah, and these are sacred tattoos as well.
Yeah, so it's an easy topic. People like it. People get into it. They go, oh yeah, and the more they hear about it, the more they want to know. And it was the same with me when I started researching this topic. And what these kind of books give me a chance to do, go deeper into these themes that normally I would just gloss over. It'd be like, one paragraph in Lonely Planet about sacred tattoos. Now doing a whole book on it. And that keeps me going too, by the way. That's really inspiring for me to be able to learn more about subjects I've always been interested in, but didn't have a real motivation to go deeper, but again, the paycheck.
Yeah, well, of course, but it's also something you're passionate about and that you're interested in. But did you find it hard to find places that do it? Are they?
There's very
all over, or are they?
Well, it's a lot more than you'd think. The funny thing is that once you get into it, you find out there's over 100 masters working in Thailand, but they're hard to find. You can't just like Google them and stuff. Even if you're writing in Thai, I mean, some of them. They're definitely making an effort to stay very, very quiet. And others, it's just not common knowledge because Thais themselves only recently started. I mean, of all levels of society, started recently re-accepting. It was kind of renaissance of popularity in Thai tattoos among Thais, but it was considered black magic, a little kind of lower class for a while. And so, for me to penetrate that world was really difficult. Really difficult.
And interesting to be kind of brought into it and cover it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's some amazing photography in there too.
Dan White, the late Dan White. He unfortunately, about 2 years after this was finished, he had a brain aneurysm and just gone like that. 47 years old, but a magnificent photographer and very nice photographs. Wow. Yeah, very difficult, again, for the photographer, also a very difficult subject because things happen so quickly, you know, the rituals and everything, like you can miss a moment. It's just, you have to really be concentrated, a photographer,
really
to get
focus
this.
on it.
Yeah.
Joe, how many coffee table books actually have you done?
If you go on Amazon, and I have a Joe Cummings author page, it has them all listed there. I think it's, with just straight coffee table books, you know, illustrated reference books, I think maybe a dozen. And then if you count all my titles that I've done from scratch, that include guidebooks, it's more like altogether about 40.
And talking about temple tattoos, you actually have temple tattoo.
I did at the end of the research. It took me 18 months to gather the research. 18 months and then the writing of it, and all over Thailand, Laos, and Cambodia, mainly Thailand. But I wanted to see what was happening in Laos and Cambodia. At the end of it, I felt like I needed the closure of getting one myself because I refrained the entire time. I was like, I'm going to be an objective observer. You know? I'm not going to submit myself to the magic. And at the end, not only did I want one to kind of, you know, just have a souvenir, so to speak, but I was thinking, you know, as I said, it was really hard to get into that world. And I felt like, you know, there's a certain protocol in that world. And I think I probably violated that protocol more than a few times in the beginning because of ignorance. So I wanted forgiveness from that world, the supernatural world, in case there was some bad juju out there. This is actually suggested to me. So I got this one, and that is to evoke benevolent love and great personal favor from the world at large.
Oh, that's really nice, and a lot of forgiveness with it, a lot of goodwill being projected.
Hopefully.
Tell me about your TEDx talks.
Yeah, I was invited back like a few months ago to the TEDx Chiang Mai, which is the fourth largest TEDx in Asia. It's really well organized. It's an Austrian fellow that does it. And they invited me to give a talk, a TEDx talk, and they let me choose the topic, so I chose this topic. And I didn't realize what I was getting into because we actually had to go through a training, like 1 month training leading up to it. And it had to be a script and rehearsals, and it was quite an involving thing. But I'm glad it came out well, and it was just released on YouTube. They videotaped it, and my 14-minute talk just came out like 2 days ago.
So you can search YouTube, Joe Cummings, TEDx talk.
Yep, it'll be there.
Fantastic. Oh my God, I don't know where you find the time to get all this done. You've probably written a few songs, you know, while you were there hanging out.
Definitely.
Yeah, fantastic. Now you also wrote some Thai phrase books to help.
I did.
It's not just the books, but you know, to help people while they're traveling.
I just saw one. Actually, I could have bought it. I just saw one in this. They're still giving me credit on that one, even though it's been revised many times by other people. But and the groundwork that I laid is very much a part of the phrase book. Yeah, it was the first. It was the first Thai language phrase book printed in, well, for English speakers since like 1920s or something like that.
Yeah, wow.
So that was kind of fun, and that was a learning experience. I learned a lot about the Thai language doing it, obviously. I mean, you know, as much as you think you know, there's always something more to know, and so.
How have trends changed over the years in traveling, the way people travel?
It's, you know, one of the things there's been a real diversification, or people are now. It's niche travel. People like focus on this. You know, it can be like golf travel or luxury beach travel, or you know, it's like more. It's almost like the music business. All these new genres keep popping up, and it's the same with travel. And that's one of the things I've noticed: is diversification. Like travel suppliers are catering to those individual niche needs more than before. You just had a general person say, "Where do you want to go? Here's a plane ticket.
Pack a bag. Let's go to Thailand. Oh, here's a book. Great. Follow this."
Yeah. So people generally have more of a purpose now. Another trend is that it's shorter. I guess people have less time these days, but my impression is that people, where maybe say an average visit to a country might be 10 days or 2 weeks now, I think it's more like 5 to 7 days or something.
Yeah, maybe people's attention spans
maybe
are shorter also.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, and they're covering more of the world too, and more of the world is open. I mean, despite all the war and everything, but in general, like you can travel across Southeast Asia now by land borders, and you couldn't do that back in the day. Back in the 80s,
that's right. It would have been too
70s,
difficult. They didn't have infrastructures to actually get people to these places.
Yeah. So I think that so people they're anxious to go to the next place on the list, maybe.
Do you think it's the same with people actually buying hardcover books, reading books, as opposed to coffee table books,
print is
or e-books?
Yeah. it's like people are getting a lot of information online now.
Yeah.
Inspiration and information online. So that you have so many different kinds of sources now for information on travel. That's a big change.
Yeah.
That's a positive change. It's sort of the democratization. We're relying less on experts like myself and more on crowdsourcing the information, opinions of other travelers. Of course, you can sometimes go wrong on that. It's not like
that's
it's
right.
not the most, information might not be the most reliable, but at least it gives you extra. You can read a guidebook too, and then also get the opinions of people traveling.
Yeah, I just noticed more recently that people are more reliant on or using reviews,
Right.
TripAdvisor and all that sort
exactly.
of stuff to actually take with them as their new Bible to travel in.
I did the same. I use a lot. I use TripAdvisor and other online forums. There's some great information in there.
Joe, you've been in Thailand 25 years. Yeah, and I know quite recently you had the honor to work on a very prestigious book in Thailand. Not many people get to be part of something like this, but King Punipama Dulyadet's more recent book, A Life's Work.
A Life's Work, that's right.
Can you tell us a little bit about that and
the
how you got involved?
Sure, the publisher is Edition DJ Millet. It's ostensibly a French language publisher, but they mainly are doing English language books these days, based in Singapore. And I had worked on 2 other books of theirs earlier. And one of them I was the project editor on it, so I worked on it for a year and a half. So they were familiar with my work, and they were commissioned. They worked out a deal, and commissioning would probably not be the right word, but it was a palace-authorized biography. They had, from the highest levels, there was this idea that let's set the record straight in a way, because there had been some famous books that we can't mention that had been out.
Yeah.
It was sort of in a way meant to, not so much to counter that writing, but it's to actually set the record straight, because there was a lot of misinformation.
Yeah.
So I was invited. I was one of 6 authors on that book, and the topic they asked me to write about was the King's music, which for me was like really an honor, and because I'm a musician, it was like so interesting to find out.
He has a huge body of music too.
44 pieces, 44 compositions, including stuff he wrote for Broadway plays, Broadway theater back in the late 50s, and it's a really amazing grasp of composition.
Yeah. He's an incredible saxophone player. His knowledge of music.
I was able to interview several of the people in the older members of his band, as well as more recent people that have, when he was still very active, when the King was still very active, that people had been jamming in Hue Hin in the palace, and I got a lot of.
We used to hear about those sessions people would fly into, and that he would, that he admired, and that he would love to jam it, and he can really play. He would,
and he devoted a lot of time to it. I mean, a lot of he had his very busy royal schedule. He would still find time to have an all-night jam session on it.
Yeah, incredible. I wish I had been part of one of those.
Yeah.
What a great honor.
Yeah.
Incredible. Joe, young writers, people coming out, whether it's in journalism or writing a book, or anything, what would be your advice to a writer, trying to get a published deal or release their first book? Or
they need to really work on the craft of writing first, and then it's what I think a lot of, again, it's so niche these days. So people have a genre they pick. They want to be a writer in this thing. They want to be whatever it is. But I think I know most of it is travel writing. So people come to me, and I even teach workshops sometimes, and they're so focused on the outside structure of that career. With travel, it's just traveling. They want to travel. They want to write to travel rather than travel to write. And you have to get your priorities straight, because you're not going to make a living otherwise. I mean, in any field of writing, it's only the top 1%, I would say, skill-wise, that actually can make a full-time living in writing. It's just a very difficult skill to develop. They don't really, you can go to creative writing courses at university, you can take journalism, master's degree, but it only teaches us so much. Again, it's the outer form, and to get the inner part, the part that actually sells,
has to be in you.
It takes a long time. It takes a lot of training. I'd say it takes the average person 5 years to just be a kind of basic writer. So I just practice, write, take a lot of writing courses, but never forget that you got to be the best. Aim to be the best.
Hard work. It really is hard work, isn't it? Will we ever see a novel by Joe Cummings?
I'm afraid to do a novel. I have a few ideas. I even at one point almost had a deal with Random House when Judith Reagan was one of the publishers there, and I knew someone who knew her, and she asked me to come in and talk in New York. She said, I got 15 minutes for you, give me the pitch. And I ended up staying 2.5 hours, and I almost had a contract, but then she was fired, and I have never followed it up since then. But that idea is still in the back of my mind, but thing. I'm just so afraid that it wouldn't do well. I'd be so embarrassed. You know, I mean, all my other stuff, I'm so successful.
Oh, don't be afraid. Just get it out there. Get it out there. I do wish you the best of luck, and I'm sure all our viewers wish you the best of luck with everything. So thank you so much for being on the show, and it's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
Talking to you.
Thank you, Keith. Good
Thanks.
stuff.
All right, great. Thank you for watching.
เปื่อนโจมักกินลาบเปื่อนโจมักกินเลื